Our Artisan Residence program is spotlighting nationally acclaimed local artists, manifesting the potential of Artisans Asylum as a nucleus of innovation and excellence in fabrication, craft, and aesthetics. The program encompasses 3 parts: a bespoke exhibition, a 2-month artist residency, and expansive programming built around the artist's skills as both a maker and educator. Rhea Vedro is a metalsmith creating at the intersections of art, materiality, and healing. Her research explores metalsmithing as a cultural signifier of values, power, and protection across belief systems and time. Trained first as a jeweler, her current studio practice is primarily hollow-form steel sculpture. At Artisans Asylum, Rhea is presenting her journey as a sculptor and her body of work on display at the newly established Gallery A2. As a special bonus, attendees can hammer their own wish marks into a steel panel, which Rhea will weld into her current project, Amulet, a public art commission for Boston City Hall Plaza coming May 2025. Prior to her appointment at MIT, Vedro was a Boston Public Art Triennial Accelerator Fellow and served as the Director of Community Engagement with the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Vedro taught metalsmithing at UW-Madison and SUNY New Paltz. Her project portfolio includes the City of Boston's Mayor Office of Art and Culture, Haystack Mountain School of Craft, the North Bennett Street School, the Vizcaya Museum, the Queens Museum, the New York City Arts Foundation, and museums, schools, and creative community spacings across America. Vedro holds both an MFA in metalsmithing from SUNY New Paltz. Thank you, Rhea, for everything over the past couple months.
Thank you, Patrick, for that awesome introduction. And this is so fun to see lots of familiar faces and some new ones as well. This has been a really special experience. Artisans Asylum, if you haven't been here before, who's like new here and hasn't been here before? Great. So if you haven't been here before, after the talk, we'll walk you down to the gallery, you can see the show, and then I encourage you to walk around, or if they're allowed to just walk around. But there's all kinds of different medium-specific areas to check out. So within this building, there's some of the lighter, like there's the jewelry shop, and there's a composites room, and there's electronics and robotics, and there's all kinds of stuff. And then across the parking lot, there's a hot shop where people are blacksmithing and welding, and a wood shop, and big, dirty, exciting art making. So it's really a playground, and it's been such a gift to have this residency. So thank you, Patrick, who has been my kind of caretaker. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about my journey as a maker and my practice. So they just put up a new projector. Is this feeling good? Good? Okay. So when I think about how to explain the through line in my work, I think about this idea of transformation. So my experience, my professional experience, and my personal art practice really holds this idea at its core of transformation. And that's both through some of the jobs that I've held and roles that I've held professionally that Patrick mentioned in that intro, as well as exploring material and how it transforms from one state to another and what it means to hold in the hand and work with it. And then more poetically or kind of adjacently, my art practice. So I won't go into the community part too much tonight so I can have time to really dig into the object making that I do. But I wanted to preface where I come from for a little context. So I am, my grandparents immigrated to New York from Ukraine and Russia, Russian Jewish, and they were communists. They were super duper social justice warriors. So I grew up, my dad was a red diaper baby in New York in the 50s with McCarthyism. So very much this instilled idea of like, you must do good in the world and community work and be part of a communal environment. So that informed my values growing up. And I did, my undergrad was looking at youth program development and community-based arts in New York City and throughout the Americas. So I was in Cuba, I lived in Brazil for about 4 years, in Oaxaca, Mexico for a couple years, in San Francisco area. And then went back to school eventually for fine metal smithing at SUNY New Paltz, where I met one of my wonderful friends who's here tonight, Sarah Turner, was there as a professor at the time. And that's actually one of the best metalsmithing schools in the country. It's pretty special. So I have a couple slides at the top that just show my work at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Have people been to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum before? So it's a Boston institution, and it's very opulent and very privileged and very much like a house museum of a collector, Isabella Stewart Gardner. And I had an opportunity to work there for about 5 years. And the biggest thing I was proud of that I did there was this collective that I formed that became an in-house collective of local artists that were called the Neighborhood Salon Luminaries, who would also work with international artists who were visiting. And they would have paid opportunities to create new work in response to the collection, as well as show their own projects outside. And they had a stipend, and they would meet together and be a collective. And so that idea of collective building has really been part of my training, what we would now call today PAR, like participatory action research, if any of you do social science typed work. But it's basically like nothing about us without us, right? So if you're doing anything, the people who are affected the most are the ones determining policy about that thing. So in many, many years of my life, I was kind of facilitating other people's art making within different spaces or collective projects, murals, within my own practice kind of on the side, like plugging away, taking classes, going to everything I could get my hands on, metalsmithing related. And then eventually I went back to school at SUNY New Paltz to pursue my MFA, my Master's of Fine Arts in metalsmithing. And these are just a couple more Gardner pictures. So right before I got over to my current position, I was embedded over here at the Gardner Museum for about 5 years. And I did a lot of work with local youth groups and police departments and artists and everyone trying to use the space as almost like a community center and to think about what was on that land before Gardner built her museum there, and to make it a little bit more of an open door space. So that's some of the background in terms of like what am I bringing to my own work, and what are some of the values that I'm grappling with as I think about like what does it mean to be an artist alone in making in your studio, and what responsibilities do you have to the world? And so for many years I was kind of like toggling between feeling like my art needed to have a message, or I needed to be kind of didactic, or it needed to be giving back in some really direct way if I wasn't doing this other kind of work. And now I'm not really there. Like I have figured out ways to merge my own personal practice with some of my community work that I feel I'm just kind of figuring that out, and I can swing between the two. But when I think about what is the through line, so it really is about transformation for me. I'm getting really hot, so I'm going to take this off. Transformation of, as I said, either community spaces or material itself. So here is me at MIT. I see some of my MIT family in the room, which is really exciting. And a little over 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity to work there. I'm now a lecturer there and an artist in residence embedded within the Department of Material Science and Engineering. So my colleagues are here tonight and my students, which is really cool. And what does that mean? Material science, like who can define material science if you're not a material scientist? Lots of people cannot. Does anyone want to throw out like what does that mean, material science? Don't be shy. Yeah.
I would say it's the properties of different stuff that you can make things from.
Yeah, it's kind of like that broad, like it's like the study of matter, right? And you get into things within, some people are looking at biological materials, and some people are looking at metallurgy, and some people are looking at ceramics, and some people are looking to develop, it's very, very broad and yet hyper myopic and narrow at the same time. So it's been an incredible place to be embedded. And here I am in front of our induction furnace where we can melt metal and do some small foundry work. So the types of classes that I teach over there, in addition to supporting others, this is one that I came up with and is now, I'm instructor of record for this class, so you can kind of see the words there. But it's a lot of the same ideas that Patrick had shared in the intro. I'm very, very interested in the history of material. I'm very, very interested in what is humankind's relationship with material across time and across cultures, and how we have mined it and refined it into objects of value and power and meaning making and adornment, and also the tool very interesting to me. And specifically, armor and amulet come up over and over and over again in my practice as ideas that I follow. So, and then I teach kind of like 101 metalsmithing within that. So students will learn how to saw and solder and maybe cast, or depending on the semester, we'll do some of these traditional chasing and rapide or different techniques for working primarily in fine metals, but also some tool making. And I just taught some of my students here a quick oxy-acetylene welding class a few weeks ago, which was really fun. So, and then what do I get to do over there? This is the stuff that like, I go home and tell my husband and son, who are also here in the audience, that my mind just like blew off of my face. Like, I can't believe it. So for my jeweler fam, this is a little grainy, but can you tell what this is?
Malachite.
Yeah, this is malachite. Look at the scale of the malachite. It's like museum grade malachite. And then malachite is primarily, it's green because why? Copper. So if you actually take this very, very low-tech experience, you can take malachite and you can mix it with carbon, charcoal, and you can smelt it into a copper ingot in like 5 minutes. And then you can hammer it out and make something out of it. And the people around me are the people that know all of the science behind exactly what's happening in that chemical reaction and what's happening to transform the malachite into copper. And I'm learning. That is not my starting place. And it's been so exciting to me. So on every possible level, like physically, it's super exciting. The gem trained part of me is like, malachite, I love malachite. And then, the forging and the working the material once it's copper is super exciting. And then this idea of transformation from a more poetic kind of arts liminal associative space is just like, oh my God, I am truly doing alchemy with these people. And then we have some really fun classes that I support the lab sections for. And actually, when Pablo's here with us, took this class a couple years ago. But you can see what we're doing here. Part of the year we focus on ancient cementitious materials, so Roman concrete, and how did people come up with the technologies that allowed them to build piers underwater and have empires that conquered other empires, all because of this technology of cement and what cement meant in the past, and then the future of cement, and carbon capture, and all of the problems of cement with CO2. And so we go back and we create both early ancient Roman concrete recipes, and the students make a wall and do frescoes. But then the second half of the semester, we work on smelting. So thinking about how do you transform the element of iron into steel, and what were the earliest technologies where people and places where people were figuring out how to do that. So here we're building a mud and fiber, this is like straw type fiber, smelting furnace. And then these are the tuyères, and then there's goatskin bellows that go over it, and then we have a party day at the end where everybody is, see, like the students, it's dirty and fun and very, very trying to like replicate exactly what people were doing. And then at the end, everyone comes out and pumps these goatskin bellows, and we try to keep the temperature hot enough inside of the furnace that we can come out with a bloom of steel that we could use, much like people when they were first, and still in some places still do it this way, when they're first creating steel that's hardenable, right, to be able to make tools, to make farming implements and implements of war and implements of technology that would then allow their civilizations to advance beyond what others can do. So super, super cool. And again, I'm embedded there, so every day I get to play with scientists who are doing this work. Another quick couple slides before I get to my own objects that I make. So in this idea of the history of steel, the transformation of material from raw to refined, we also have gotten to do some really fun and special things. So this gentleman up here is Bob Kramer. Bob Kramer is probably the most famous living bladesmith alive today, and he's super humble and amazing. He's out in the Washington area, and he was on all those shows, that any of them that you can possibly think of. And he came and taught us bladesmithing for a couple weeks, and I got to follow him around and learn everything I can, and then teach that now to my students on a beginner level. But can you see what's going on here? So this, and these are other people in my department who are incredible, Mike Charkanian and Yet. And so when these are Japanese swords, and this is a progression where you would be working with your raw ore and you're refining and you're folding it over and hammering it out, and then you're eventually continue to fold it over on itself, and it's getting more and more refined. So kind of understanding the history of how people are making these things and then getting to actually do them. So super fun, and then again, because it's the material science department, everything is a phase diagram, and everything is understanding what is happening, the crystalline structure, and all of the things that as jewelers and metalsmiths we talk about annealing and tempering and hardening, but to really understand what is going on with these crystal lattices and all of this is just so exciting and brings the work to this other level, both scientifically and then also kind of my magic mind that is thinking of these things as less like just science, and really, really inspiring. And then I do stuff with I'm not going to play this whole video, but I do stuff with the Morningside Academy of Design, which is inside the architecture school.
A learning community.
So I'm also an advisor to the design school students. So that's really fun. I don't really consider myself a designer. I consider myself an artist, and that's become more and more clear to me over the last few years as I'm working on my current project. But it's really fun. So I get to work with all these people who are artists, very much in the technical only. So like they are very adept 3D printers and laser cutters and water jetters and modelers in a 3D space that is digital, but have not, some of them are mechanical engineering oriented and have some of that with their hands, but a lot of them haven't gotten to like hang out with material and experience it where they are the CAD themselves, their body, right? So I think about that a lot. All right, now I'm gonna get into me and what I make, but that's context, right? So coming through thinking about community and this transformation of communities and kind of being a conduit, and then getting now to be embedded in this incredible top institution in the world at MIT where people are looking at material through very, very micro scales and then through the history of time. So the department that I just shared, it's not just material science, it's also archaeometallurgy is a lot of what we're doing. So these are some detailed shots of some of my work, some of which is in the gallery. Oh, one of them, two of them. And some inspirations. So again, armor and amulet. I'm so interested in this idea of, these are mezuzahs. These are more Islamic talismans that be worn on the body with a scroll inside. This is an image of armor, horse armor. I'm so interested in these objects that would be protective objects, objects that would also be mimicking the skin themselves, but they are art objects on the skin, of the skin. And then birds, like everything comes back to them for me. They're a huge source of inspiration in my work. And why? I mean, they're amazing to look at, but then they're also these messengers between realms in every single cosmology, right? So between the living and the dying, the bird's eye view, and I come back to them again and again as an image in my work. So some early work, began to play in steel, had worked in fine metals, and then started making chasing tools, and was like, chasing tools are like little stamps, and was like, oh my God, I love steel so much. So I started to make, and these images don't have dimensions on them, I apologize, but this is maybe like 2 feet long, and it's both a vessel and a bird and an instrument, it's a sculpture. But I was playing with these images and experimenting with texture, so rust, paint, waxes, gold leaf, and texture, and really trying to soften. This one's about 3 feet across, this white ruffle piece, wall-mounted piece. Trying to feminize and soften this material. I play a lot with mica as well. So this is aluminum leaf over steel with a wood back and this kind of mica portal. And these are pieces that, this is called organ. I'm thinking about the heart and the neck. And again, playing, and these are limbs. Thinking about this kind of like tenderness towards this material and this way to make it feel, like when you look at samurai armor and you look at the toes, if you do this, go home and like look this up. There's this very, very tender thing that's happening. So it's armor, but it's also indicating the vulnerability of what's inside just by the like softness of its curvatures. And I'm really interested in that, like this vulnerability that's indicated by the armor. So I'm always trying to make pieces that feel like, are they outside or inside? Are they like old and discovered from being buried underneath earth for years and years? Or are they just made now? Are they bone? Are they wood? Are they metal? So really trying to play with that. And this piece is as tall as me. So this is the scale of me. This wing piece. This one's about 2.5 feet tall. And these are some process shots, so you can see, like, how do I make these things? So we have a lot of people in this room that are, like, insane makers. I see people that are, like, insane glass artists. I know Heather White is in the room, who is the other artist in residence with me here in the show, who's incredible. And just talking to people as they were drifting in today. So I won't talk too much, but welding, it's really interesting. So a lot of people know how to weld, but it seems like now not that many people torch weld or oxyacetylene weld. They learned it in class quick for like a minute, and then they went on and do MIG and TIG, and that's what they do all day. So, but that's my primary thing. So I do MIG weld to tack things or for some larger stock, but primarily I am treating it like a jeweler. So I'm very interested in fire. I'm not that interested in electricity. And I'm letting the seams be. I'm not grinding them out. And I play with a lot of patinas that like gun blue and things that gun makers use, and a lot of waxes and paints. This one's in the gallery, so you can see it. This one's called Saddlebird. And I think it's really interesting when you bring in wood or mica or other materials that have a different levity and a different kind of grounding to them with the steel. It helps it be in a more interesting dialogue. And I'm always really interested in this abstraction, like, is it, to me, this piece, which you'll see in the gallery, is it a bird? I think of it as like a saddle waiting for something to take off into outer space, or to be, I don't know, it's like a bird as well. Details, and that's the Saddlebird in process, right? So it's steel, starts, all those finishes are at the end, with metal leaf and wax and gun blue and layers of things. And then that texturing is the same texture I'm using today on the big sculpture I'm about to show you, and I'd talk more about that later. So here's 3 views of another piece in the gallery. This one was inspired by Viking ships. So in addition to birds, I'm really interested in this idea of migration generally. So both, political migration, being family that were immigrants going through a lot of journeys, and then like boats, just as, if you ever talk to a boat builder or look at traditional boat building, it's so beautiful and so intriguing aesthetically in addition to like functioning. So this in my mind is like a bisected Viking ship coming out of the wall, and this is half of it. And if you go look at it, it looks one way as you're head on, and another way from the other side, and another way from the other side. And it has some little rock crystal that I was playing with that's embedded, and it's like a treasure inside. That's the bottom of it. There it is up at a library with Graham, my husband, who's here. And this one is also in the gallery, and mica, gold leaf, and steel. Human, like my span. Details. Okay, and now what I'm working on. So for what feels like my entire life, but it's been on and off for a couple of years, I have had this vision that I really wanted to do of like guardian birds, big, like at the scale of the landscape, right? So I've been thinking about this idea of the amulet, first on the body, and then thinking a lot about like tools that make an amulet, and now I'm trying to work at the scale of the landscape. So I had the opportunity, they now are called the Boston Triennial, and they have this accelerator program for artists who are doing their first public art pieces that are not usually working at that scale, and then are now about to work at that scale. So I got chosen to be, left the Gardner Museum, COVID had happened, all the things, and I got this fellowship, which was really exciting, and a chance to think big and develop work at a different scale. So this is a rendering, but this is what I'm working on. And I wanted birds that felt like guardians, and originally I wanted them sighted on a pier, like looking out into the ocean, like you could walk through like Chinatown gates, lions, But then I met with the city and the pier would sink. It like wasn't graded for the weight of the cement and like all the realities of public art, right? My friends that are public art people here. So for that project, it was like I did a much smaller thing. And then now I'm actually getting to work on the like scale that I saw in my head. So this is kind of what happened. So I did a lot of going back to that community, the skills within community building and participatory action research, and really thinking about like what communities want and bringing in people. I wanted to put this piece on the waterfront in East Boston, and I did. And so we did a ton of workshops together with some community organizations out there in East Boston, right along the water. And my invitation has been, what you still see in the gallery, asking people to think about an intention for safe passage for a loved one or for some journey they're on internally, and take a tool, a chasing tool, a steel tool, and a hammer, and while focusing on that intention, make some marks, some simple stitching marks like the ones I've shown you as texture in my pieces. And then gathering up all those marks and putting them into this public art piece so that these really are amulets for the community of the community. And even if you don't know that, hopefully they'll be layered and dynamic enough to look at and appreciate them, and which all art should have those layers in my opinion. And then if you go deeper and you ask the story, that's the story, right? So lots of workshops. Then I put this little workbench, which I'll show you some slides of, right here on the waterfront. And then for the last 2 years on and off, while the city has been building a pad to put things on and things have been kind of like stopsy-startsy, I got a commission from the City of Boston Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture to make the big bird sculptures, not just the waterfront bench thing, but to put them somewhere where they have engineering drawings and they're gonna be fine in the wind and the snow and the rat mitigation plan and all of the things. So that is coming up, and here's just some people hammering workshops. Here's out at Lepresti Park in East Boston. And so it's just like, if you ever been, anyone been to Lepresti Park? Oh my God. If you haven't been to Lepresti Park, go to Lepresti Park tomorrow. It is one of the most beautiful secrets in the Boston area, and it's right on the water. People are playing soccer, and you can go get like amazing tacos down the street, and the water ferries and taxis are going by. And so I had this piece up that was a workbench, and the bottom is made of cement, and then I had this wooden topper and a copper panel embedded on the top and these little hammers. And this was this idea, so it was kind of taking the workshops to a static object that sat there when I wasn't there, and that was up in the summer. And you can see people making their marks. This one has sound, let's see if it... And so it's cool, look at the boats, look at the like sense of motion. I would love that. I love the idea of a piece on the water where you have like the movement of the water and the wind and the big boats and little boats. And it felt like a real honor to have a piece like right on the water like that. And so people just come by and bang on it, make their wish or not. And then eventually got vandalized, like all the things that happened to public art, and we took down. But that's fine. It didn't weigh too much to break anything, it was just a little thing. Across the water is City Hall. So that's where the big sculpture is going. So it's also like this interesting looking onto the site of the future piece. Okay, then City Plaza, who's like seen the meme with the cop slide at City Hall Plaza? Okay, so if you haven't, it's sad and funny, but basically they built this like incredible new, they redid City Hall Plaza, and they built, which is where my piece is going, and they installed a new playground, which is probably so fun, but if you weigh over like 50 pounds and you go down this one slide, you like crash and burn. So some cop tried it out, and then someone took a picture and then posted to social media and like made all the cop jokes, and there's this guy that like, so anyway, people know it as the cop slide, but that's where my piece is across from the cop slide, and it's a pretty awesome slide if you have kids or you want to risk it. So when they did the grand opening, they still hadn't built the sculpture pad, or they had, but there was stuff happened, so it wasn't ready to go. But they invited me to come and just do more wish mark workshops. So that's where you see these tiny little swatches where people have a couple marks, and they would sometimes write their intention on it. I have all different iterations of this. So there's like big panels where people have all collaboratively wrote a wish on it. There's ones like this. There's ones where nobody writes anything. It's just in your head. And all of that gets burnt off, right? So the idea of like this intention also gets vaporized into the world, into the air. It's like a ceremony as well, is really interesting to me. So this is the spot. This is the architectural call for a piece. that's the height, so that's me like being excited in my winter jumpsuit. So that's about how tall they'll be. And I'm really hoping you all will come May 23rd. And this is a rendering that I'm not like a digital artist at all, so this is more how I work, like collage. And then you can see, like, again, what's the process? So this was a prayer. My friend passed away, Ibrahim. This little piece was really thinking on him. And then, you know, there I am just like hammering and forming it. And then, and each thing is very organic. Like, it's been interesting because I've always worked this way, where it's like dressmaking or pattern making, where I have a form, like I'll have an under armature, and I have some non-negotiables with the line quality and the frame, or if it's going to be wall mounted, I've built the part that will bracket to the wall first, so everything's flat on the back, or if it's, you know, I've had learned to think on that. But it's always very organic. It's not like planned out and modular. So then these things get welded and his name, right, burned off, and those intentions were kind of atomized. And then there's all these little tendrils and these millions and millions of this, not millions, I'm lying, but, you know, like hundreds of little curlicues and parts at this point that are going into this piece. And so then when I first was working on the armature, they're like, got help making these, because I had been making everything out of 1/4-inch bar stock and like welding it with my torch, and it's just, and I thought I could just build over that and I'd be good to go. But of course then I met with engineers and they were like, you can't do that, so you need to have this other thing. And so that was me, like, I don't know if you can see it because it's like wintry, but this line work, this is 1/4-inch bar stock. It's like this much flowier thing that then was built first, and then I retrofit to like slip it over the just mushroomy shape there, and now I'm building over that. And you know, I get to learn new things. So I'm at MIT, so I get to learn how to use the water jet and try to be more efficient in my practice. Like, what does it mean to make things at this larger scale versus everything I'm cutting out by hand on my Beverly shear, which is how I've always worked, if you know what that is, furtless shear. And then this is actually the last little video I wanted to show you, and then I'll take questions and kind of wrap it up. So here's me at Artisans Asylum, like using their awesome bay in the welding bay across the street, and just welding up some of these pieces. And then it's a little montage, and then you can see, you know, they get welded. One of the things that I'm really interested in, so they're tacked with a, I don't even think these were with the MIG. I guess they were with the MIG. They're tacked with the MIG or not, and then all the seams are done with torch. So if you're a metals person, and everything's like rusting, I'm going to deal with that later. But they've literally been like in my driveway is where I'm working on them, right? So is this repeating already? Do you see this part yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I take it back, and this is stuff in progress, and then I'm putting those pieces over this armature and eventually sheathing everything and welding it, you know, right here it's just getting tacked, but welding it in place. And these are on their side. So these are on their side, and then they're going to get tipped upright, and then I'm building these cement bases that they will get cold connected to, which will add like another 4 feet or so of height, 5 feet depending on the one. And then those get cold connected down to a cement base at City Hall Plaza. So you can kind of picture. So everything is kind of like responding to the material as I go, which I've realized, like, one of the gifts of being at Artisans Asylum is meeting all these other sculptors and all these other people. So while I've been over across the street, some of you know Matt Behor, is that his name? Behor. You know, he's making like a fire sculpture to go off to something like a Burning Man, and it's modular cubes. There's like 200 modular cubes that he's welding, and he's hand welding them, like he's doing that labor himself with some helpers. But everything's like jigged and modular, and then it folds up and becomes its own shelf for storage, and everything is like, it's such a different way of working at scale, right? And the way that I'm working, it's not really designed for scale. But as long as I can enjoy the process and kind of be, those of you who are makers in the room, which is probably like 95% of you, 100% of you in some way or another, but those of you who make with your hands, you'll appreciate what I'm saying, this kind of like Zen zone where you can get in and you're making decisions in real time in response to the material, right? So like, it's telling you to back away and look at it from a different angle and actually invert something, or it's telling you, you know, no, this actually needs to be much thicker and denser in this area than you thought, or, you know, all of those real-time decision-making that you can do, versus if you have architectural rendering and you're just like, that's it, and you send it to a fabricator and they make it for you, and then it goes back and it looks just like the rendering, which is what I've realized is most public art at scale is like that, right? And we have people in the room that can talk more about that, but that's been such a learning curve for me, like, and I realized, like, I would like making the way that I make. I want to have more and more skills in my toolbox and more people that I can call upon to help me do those things efficiently. But that thing, I don't know that I need to stop on this slide, but that thing of being in dialogue with your material is, going back to that idea of transformation, is just really the most fulfilling for me. And because I've been very, very blessed, and knock on wood, to keep it where I have a day job, so I'm not trying to just live off of selling these pieces. So I make what I want and how long it takes, right? And then I have other jobs, whether it was the job at the museum or my job teaching now, where I can have that stability and then make the things that I want to make. And that's really important to me, and everyone negotiates that in different ways. But I think this, it's just been so fascinating to be here and to be talking to different artists that work. They're like, haha, you're making small stuff. And I'm like, really? You know, and to be able to learn from them, and then also be like, who am I and what do I want to make, and what are the things that bring me joy in making, and where can I kind of get in my zone and just watch that puddle if you're welding, or and try to continue this journey of making a hard thing feel organic and soft. I'm really interested in, when I work with sheet, for those of you who are steel people, this is 20 gauge steel. So it is like jeweler gauge material, like you could make earrings or you can make whatever. That gauge, a lot of it you can do cold. And that was kind of a function of working in a shop in my driveway for years, where I didn't, or my basement or whatever, where I didn't have a forge and I didn't have all this stuff, and I needed to just do everything with a torch and a vise and a couple tools. And so I like to close everything. So I like to make it enclosed so that no one can tell what gauge it is. It could be very dense, it could be solid, it's a mystery unless you know. So that's something I'm always playing with too, the sense of volume and form and like levity and weight. It's very interesting to me, visually. So that's what I have for you tonight, and I really love seeing all these people here. And I'll take any questions if you have them, but thank you so much.
Ritualistic care or maintenance, because it's steel and it may rust, but is that part of it? You know, the wish, the transformation, the ritual, the care, like, is that built into the project?
Super great question, and like there's kind of two answers that are in tandem oppositional. So when you do a public art project for the city, and I'm sure for most places, you have to submit like a maintenance and care plan, so that, and depending who you're doing it for, they'll take care of it or you'll take care of it. But there is like plans, and a lot of it is literally stuff like rats. Like, how are you going to ensure that the bottom that is hollow doesn't have rats? I'm like, that's a thing. Let me stop and talk about it. In terms of, so patinas, the final patinas will have a mix of rust, so it will naturally change, but it's also going to have some of those gold leaves and white and some of those palette that you see. But no, like for me, the transformational like power part of gathering from community and focusing on my own intentions, which has been part of my practice on all those other pieces that you see, they're all kind of like a prayer. They're all kind of like a little, think of like a protective necklace blown up. They're like a little ceremonial object, or a big ceremonial object to me, and then no one else has to know that. Like, I don't care. it's the process that is feeding me. So same with that. Like the story is there. They're gonna put up a video. There'll be a cool thing inside City Hall that you can come watch about the process, and there'll be a QR code and a plaque and all that cool stuff. And we'll have a big ribbon cutting celebration to May 23rd, please come, to celebrate it with the mariachi band and all those community groups that I listed on that one slide. In terms of it being ceremonial in its care, no, I'm just gonna be so happy that I did it and finished it. And it'll be up for 1 to 5 years. So it's a temporary public art piece, and that's the scale of temporary in the city. And so they are responsible for it. Once I put it up, they're gonna be in charge of taking it down when they want to take it down. And that's amazing, because those of you who do big projects know, like, that's half of it. It's like, how do you take down? Where do you store it? What do you do? What's your storage unit look like? So, although, if any of you want it to travel to you next, I'm sure that they could put in a bid, not a bid, but like can go somewhere. So, no, for me, it's kind of like in the making, and then, and it'll be sealed, but it will also change, because the patinas of rain and snow and all that, and that's okay, and that's kind of built into my vision for it. But it's more like mandala and less like stone, I guess.
Valeria, thank you so much. This was amazing. I really loved and appreciated how you did this through line of transformation, like to your approach to materials, to community, thinking about that. And I'm so curious, like, you embedded as a metals artist in residence at MIT, in like a space where people are thinking about welding on these like molecular levels, and you're thinking on like ancient alchemical, kind of like higher level or broader views on it. Like, what have been some of the most like transformational impacts of you working in that space with other folks, or maybe like most generative points of dialogue that your work has created in that space? Yeah.
For me?
No,
I can only
for
speak.
your
I think I can
colleagues.
only speak for me.
Okay.
And actually, Ellen works in. This is my colleague up front. Wonderful to have you here. Works in our department as well in some different ways. I don't feel I can speak for anyone else, but I think for myself, I bring a sense of wonder and excitement. And so that's constant. Like, I am the person, like, another cool thing happening in our space this last couple months, and actually I'm gonna bring my son to try it next week. So if you are like a jeweler, or you are a metalsmith, or you are just somebody who's like poetically artistic, like you geek out about like beauty, or pain, or whatever your thing. Like, we have an induction forge, so if you put, similar to the malachite to copper transformation, if you put basalt in an induction furnace in a graphite crucible, you can make lava. You can turn it into obsidian within like 5 minutes. And you can go from like crumbly basalt, like what you would use like on your pumice foot stone is what it looks like when you put it in, and then you put it in a graphite crucible and you heat it to high temperature, and it's self-fluxing, and then you can pour it into or over a form, and you're like Pele, the goddess of the volcano in real time, and you're pouring lava. And so I'll be in those moments, and I'm like losing my mind in that way, where I'm like, do you guys understand how amazing it is? And safely and like without being foolish, but like in my heart as a maker, I am so energized by that. And I want to tell everyone I know who loves me knows this story already. And so I think that I bring maybe a sense of remembering to like get out of the right here and just see how it connects to other fields and things like that. And then also, I'm always taking my students out of the classroom, so we'll be traveling around the city for all kinds of field trips throughout the year and meeting with people. And I think in any field, and particularly high up in any field, like MIT or the museum field or wherever, we talk about this with my husband here sometimes, like it's like an iceberg where you're so aware of who the stars are within your own little world. And then as soon as you like step off your own little world, no one knows their name, no one gives a who they are, and you're kind of, everyone's humbled and back to the same level, right? And I think that that's so healthy, and people there are like so in admiration of whoever that I don't know. And then same with me, like I'm so in admiration of whoever that they're like, whatever. And so that's a really interesting and healthy thing. And then it is archaeometallurgy. So they're often like, are looking at those histories, but they're looking from a very, very dry perspective. It's like, you know, everything with a millimeter and a ruler in the field and figuring out like exactly, but can trace fascinating things like the history of cultures through where the Bronze Age took off in this way and then was replicated over here, but it was secret. And then I'm watching those lectures and I'm like, wait, there were all of these cultic objects, like religious objects next to the smelting facility. What was the relationship like of this idea of transformation and religion? And it will be like a side note, but then that will be a tunnel I'll get to go explore and research and then play with poetically, associatively as an artist. So it's a pretty special opportunity, and that's what I get out of it a lot. Or if I want to do like, right now I'm working on Mesopotamian cylinder seals. You guys like go look those up. They're so cool. And that's my thing I want to do next, like everything about that. And then there's so much at my disposal to find from all of these people around me at MIT, but anything historic, object-based. But again, it's not coming necessarily from the like maker mind. It's coming more from a drier, factual space. And then I can play from there. And so it's just so amazing. And everyone's awesome, and at least that I'm working with directly. Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
I was thinking about, you were talking at one point about how you're attracted to like the tender moments in armor and sculpture, and your homework has these really tender, kind of vulnerable moments. And then I think about public art and how you often can lose so much tenderness when you work at that scale, or you work at something that has to be durable for people and rats and buses and everything. Can you talk about like, you know, is that something you've been thinking about, or trying to like hold on to the tenderness, or it's okay if it disappears, or?
Totally. I love this question. I'm holding on to the tenderness,
Yeah.
but I don't think I'm working smart. Like, I don't think, like, anyone who looks at what I'm doing would be like, that is an efficient and smart way to construct something at that scale. I think it's, like, not smart. But it allows me that tenderness because I can, like, because I'm using flame and not electricity, everything is hot enough that I can use little wooden hammers and, like, round out my seams so they meet, like, round real time, one little, like, centimeter at a time, versus, like, a MIG thing or a big industrial thing. So I don't know if anyone will care about me. I hope that the objects retain the reward factor where when you get from far away across the street, it still has the like pop of line quality and things that people will see. And then I hope that you'll get closer and you'll be rewarded with those little details and you'll be like, whoa, there's texture there. Or like, whoa, look at that little curly cue in the inside. And I tried to have fabricators help me with certain stuff, but I'm too in my mind, so I'm unable to communicate what I want, and then I'm like frustrated with them, and they're like, I'm worthless as a client or whatever. So I can't do that yet. I haven't figured it out. So I hope it retains the tenderness. I'm very interested in like terminuses, like, you know, like if I can get those kind of curvatures on the ends of things without it getting too like 80s tattoo or whatever. So I'm playing with that and trying to make sure that things like come back, because the material, particularly this gauge, is so cutty and sharp if the edges are left exposed and so pointy. And you know, when I first started, the other thing about working in your driveway, so I'm interacting with everybody all the time. Like families come by and they're like, what are you doing? And like kids try to touch stuff, and my son's friend comes over and like sticks his head inside, and you know, snow is falling on things. And so it's been like really interesting in that way to also hear what people think mid-process. So, you know, when I first started, people were like, that's scary. And then I was like, oh no, it's scary. And, you know, I don't want it to look scary, or like, that looks like a dinosaur. And I'm like, no, I don't want it to look like a dinosaur. Or like, you know, so you're kind of like metabolizing people's impressions in real time and having to take them in, figure out if they're useful, and then, but like stay true to your process and your vision and like believe. So that was a tangential answer, but yes, the tenderness matters. And also I constantly am going to stand across the street. Yeah. So like doing something and I'm like backing up and going across the street. Questions? Yeah.
This is somewhat related actually to the last two questions. it seems like your process is really intentionally slow, and that slowness is really important to you. And I guess I wanted to know a little bit about your thoughts about that and how time works into your work. And also, especially with this project, you know, changing scale physically also means changing scale temporally, right? So projects that, you know, pieces that used to take a month are now taking a year, and the effect that has on back into your process. And you kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. What an interesting question. Okay, so I think that I'm not intentionally slow. I just am slow, and the processes that I've chosen are slow compared to like just like laying bead like industrially or something. But I've had different moments. So like some moments I'm in like a trough of despair, like I suck, this is stupid, like why did I approach this work in this way? I'm never gonna finish, it's gonna crush me, it's gonna hurt me, I'm like dumb, it's so slow, it's the wrong approach to the scale. But then other moments, because I have this practice that I like to call mindful making, like what I shared with you about like being very intentional when I'm doing mark making, I will journal every time I finish for the day. So I have a little sketchbook. When I'm done working for the day, I'll just write a couple things, like worked on this today, and there's usually a little gem in that process. And because my making is so much my own zone, where like if anyone walks in on me while I'm making, I'll like startle. You know, I'm very able to just go inward, which is why I make, I guess. A lot of the time, the things that will be in those notebooks are like useful to my life. They're like little fortune cookie quips, right? Like I had to change the angle of the piece in order to actually see what was going on. I had to step away and get some perspective. I have to work on the tight inner parts first, or I won't be able to clean those up if I try to do the outside first. All those things are like metaphors for your life and your spiritual development, whatever. So for me, that's really real, and I use those as kind of like watching my process and watching what I get out of it. And because this project's been going on so long, to return to your question, long for me, and just me alone, like I don't have a fabricator team or assistants and stuff. I mean, many people are helping me in many adjacent ways, but I'm in like a really long-term relationship with my own making and able to reflect on it in a way I haven't with the shorter-term things. And so I can see cycles. I can be like, oh yeah, I'm back at this place, but I know it'll be fine because I got through it before, or like something like that. So time, I think it'll be, when I finish this, I'm gonna go make like a lot of short, quick things. And I'm gonna be on like a beach in white clothes, my toes out. But for now, like it's interesting to kind of be in relationship with the material so intensely, like, and all the subtleties, right, like of weight and how it responds under a hammer, different colors, and all those things are like part of my body memory now. And through doing like a lot of repeated movements over years, I mean, I haven't been just working on it straight. I have like a job and other things, but I think that answers your question for me. Yeah.
Tiny question, since
Yeah.
you work outside in your driveway, do you get to go out and torch the snow off every once in a while?
That's what we're talking about. That would actually be the right thing, is to get, I have like a propane tank, for like barbecue style, and like there's an attachment that I should get that's like the lower one.
Yeah, it's like brushy, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right now I don't have that attachment,
So you'd have to do it like.
so,
very
but it's
slow.
really only been like this month and maybe some of last month where it's just so rough, with like icicles on things and stuff. But I should. I do have like special insurance. I am a LLC. I have my garage, but it is set as a insured as a studio that I'm doing welding in. Like that's known to when I made a business, and that is really, and doing public art was what pushed me to do that. You know, and I got things rewired for a MIG welder with electrician and all that. So that's been like a lovely. I'm like allowed to do fire. But I don't know how. When we had the drought some months back, I was really genuinely terrified, like that I would light the neighborhood on fire, my house and my neighbors and stuff. But I didn't. Yeah.
Where's your driveway located?
Yeah, come by. I'm in Medford. I'm in West
Oh,
Medford.
cool.
Yeah. So if any of you are my neighbors, please say hi. And tonight in the gallery, there's a couple of those little panels and simple chasing tools and hammers, so I will invite you, if you have time, to follow me down the hall to the gallery, a beautiful show that Patrick curated, and my co-collaborator, artist in residence Heather White, amazing metalsmith, has worked with me in the show. And you can add your wish mark to a panel right now, and I will weld it into the piece. And then May 22nd, I hope we'll get everybody on a mailing list and invite them. 23rd, oh my God. Patrick knows better than me. Friday, May 23rd, Memorial Day weekend. Come on out and hear some mariachi and eat some food and help me celebrate that I got this thing up. And if you can't make it then, hopefully you'll see it at the north entrance, right across from the public market, at the mayor's office.